everybody, I am Dr. Amy Nilsson, and I'm obsessed about mitochondria right now. So I thought today's mitochondrial live, today's Facebook live, we could talk about mitochondrial health and just everything that I'm kind of exploring with that. I'm a naturopathic doctor here in Austin, Texas, and I specialize in lots of things. So I actually work a lot with GI health, hormonal health, and neurotransmitter health. So the mitochondria are this very interesting phenomenon in the body, right? It's like, I call it the batteries of your tissue. You have mitochondria everywhere, but the most concentrated places, if you were to give like the three largest places, or the three places in your body that have the largest concentration of mitochondria, would definitely be your brain, your heart, and your liver. And I think you could make an honorable mention for like the kidney detox system, those kind of things. So the mitochondria are the batteries of your cell. They make your ATP, right? So that's the energy currency of the body. That's you feeling awake and alive, right? And the reason we breathe oxygen is to make energy in the body. So the mitochondria actually house the oxygen. And oxygen, look at the periodic table, they just want 2 more electrons in their outermost shell. So oxygen is like this magnet of electrons coming to it. That flow is like any flow. Think of a slide, is a gradient of energy, right? So you've got energy production can happen off gradients. So that's just a little synopsis about the mitochondria and what happens. So you need a flow of electrons happening so that you can make ATP. And in the mitochondria are actually a little bit more sophisticated than all of that. They actually do produce some proteins at different times to signal up different things. And one of those things is actually your own cell death, called apoptosis. So if there was a struggle, if there was a sickness, if there were something going wrong, your body knows how to shut down cells, and provided that you're still, like dividing them, right? So there's a litany of different cellular proteins that the mitochondria can secrete at any given moment. And this is really interesting to me because of studying metabolism. And lately I've been really diving into trauma and stress and understanding that for the human body and what it means for metabolism. Because we've got the fight and flight system, right? Your epinephrine and norepinephrine, get up and run, you're in danger. Your body can only do that for so long. And that's because the mitochondria have a say-so in that. They're going to say, you know what? You've been running fast for a very long time, and I'm going to go ahead and shut it down now because I cannot produce enough energy for you to outrun this thing that you constantly need to do, So what happens are these backup energy production systems. Anybody who's ever like run for a marathon or trained for a marathon or something, or worked out excessively, right? You get sore muscles the next day. Well, lactic acid buildup in the tissue, right? So you went through your cellular respiration, you went through your energy production. Now you're going to have the backups on board. And that's a byproduct of lactic acid production. That's why your muscles feel stiff and sore. That has to clear from the liver and you'll be fine. But the interesting thing in chronic stress and chronic inflammation is that concept can happen earlier, and you're not training for anything, right? So when chronic stress kind of hits the body, we want to understand it because you've got the kind of stress and fatigue that almost becomes a cellular problem, right? There's even emotional traumas and stress over long periods of time become a cellular problem. And you really want to understand that for folks because a lot of complaints are going to come in surrounding that. And for sure, the metabolic complaints are going to be a thing, right? The other would be even adaptations in the immune system. So if somebody's coming in with some type of autoimmune system issue, you're going to want to understand that so that you can appropriately help somebody. Because let's say you push that person into exercise more, eat less, and they have a complete collapse in the whole deal. Like, you can't push that person into that style of, or you can't give them that advice because it will it'll hurt them more. You're supposed to do no harm as a practitioner. So understanding the root cause of metabolic issues and these changes resulting from this collapsed state, I think is very important. That said, there are mitochondria. Think of habits that help the mitochondria. First and foremost is get enough sleep. I know we always say that, but you really do need about 7.5 to 8.5 hours of uninterrupted sleep. That requires you going to bed at, a decent hour and really doing the math on that to figure out like when you wake up in the morning, when you have to go to bed, that kind of thing. So that does kind of, take place with your habits and what you have to do to maintain that. The other is, if you have like apnea, sleep events, or if you are snoring a lot, it's really important to kind of get that straightened out. I know with sleep apnea, we look a lot in chronic allergies and postnasal drip. Sometimes working that riddle will kind of help the airway out quite a bit. I also do a lot with food sensitivities. And when you actually reduce a lot of the inflammatory foods in somebody's body, their apnea or their snoring or whatever's going on actually decreases. So if you ever notice that for yourself, if you've had a day where you ate crap, maybe you're going to snore a little bit more tonight, right? Start noticing that for yourself. See if you pick up that situation. The other is to go ahead and go get a sleep study done and, and then work with a practitioner to help with your sleep quality. That I think will definitely be useful. One of the things when you're looking at somebody's like CBC, which is the complete blood count, if the hematocrit level is elevated, then you're going to ask some questions about sleep apnea, because that could be one of those signs and symptoms that go on there. So you can't put good sleep in a bottle. You can take things to try to go to sleep, this is for sure, but I really think the good healthy sleep habit is something that just has to be maintained for the system. Yes, we do give things to help with sleep. So we often understand if somebody's having a hard time falling asleep or staying asleep. We ask questions about sleep. If you're dreaming, if you're waking up feeling rested, all these things are really important to understand the why of how somebody can't sleep. So basically, if they're having trouble with their cortisol and melatonin rhythm, you're going to pick that up by those lines of questions. Or if somebody just has a sympathetic overdrive and they're actually in an agitated state and now they're trying to go to sleep, good luck. So you really try to understand what's happening there. And that said, there's some really great habits. So another healthy habit this dovetails into is actually enhancing your parasympathetic nervous system. So really getting yourself to deep breathe, taking a big deep breath, stimulating the vagus nerve. There's a lot of somatic work that's being presented. You could probably, Google that and find a bunch of somatic exercises that actually help the vagus nerve. It's really important for the body to feel that parasympathetic system. So especially as you're going through a crisis or as you're going through major stress or major transitions or you name it, you know what it's like to feel triggered and stressed out and emotional. It doesn't mean not to feel that. It's important to give your body the experiences of what you're feeling. But it is important then to invite the parasympathetic system to that party, right? So by doing deep breathing and reminding the body that the parasympathetic system is here, it sends a different signal to your body and sets the biochemistry up in a much different way. And in fact, think of it, deep breathing, what are you doing? You're oxygenating yourself, right? You're giving yourself GABA that reduces the sympathetic tone, right? So you calm down it's the inhibitory system. It calms the nerve impulses down. Lets your brain think differently. It lets your body relax. It calms everything down, lowers the heart rate, slows the breathing rate, lowers the blood pressure, right? So changes the blood flow, it gives a blood supply back to the bowel. So when you're deep breathing, a lot goes on. But the thing is, you have to remember to deep breathe, and that's hard to do. I've literally thought to myself, okay, top of the hour, time for big deep breaths. Because I'm like you, I just get really busy and just get through the day, and I get caught up in problem solving, and I go, oh, I have not had a big deep breath in probably a couple hours. So it is time to take a big deep breath. And that does a lot for the body, for the mitochondria. Hello, oxygen. And then also it changes the blood flow, right? So that's very important for your system. It's very important for your stress. It's very important for how the body is interfacing with that traumatic thing that you're dealing with. Because what do we want? We want it not to be chronic. We want to kind of build out a different strategy so that the body doesn't go into adaptations of chronic stress. And if you're there, it's okay. We also want to build out the adaptation to heal back into the parasympathetic tone. So getting the body to remember I am safe, to feel safe, right? So mitochondria, you got to sleep well. You've got to deep breathe. The other thing you have to do is exercise. Isn't that? And you don't have to go crazy. Like I was just saying, if somebody's in a collapsed state and you're like, I'd like you to go ahead and run 3 miles today. Not happening. Bad idea. Don't say that to somebody. But they can walk, they can stretch, and they can build muscles, right? Muscle building is really interesting. So the mitochondria, can divide and you can get more mitochondria. The one thing that does do that efficiently is muscle building, but also circulation, so stretching and things like that. So I do like, you do have to move. You don't have to just go extreme and, you have to modify your exercise for where you're at. And that's why it's very important to work with somebody. If you want to go work with a trainer, that's a great idea. They can often give you like a better idea of where to start and where to go, right? So don't let perfect get in the way of good, but exercising, at least moving once a day, even if it's just I'm going on a 30-minute walk, and maybe 3 times a week you go on a little bit more strenuous walk, like maybe you pick a hike, a 3-mile hike or something like that. You don't have to do that every day, but maybe you plan for that once a week and make it fun, invite some friends, all this kind of thing. This just popped in my friend. I had a friend who she would go hiking, and that was her time when she would get to have a Snickers bar. And I thought, well, that's cute. I mean, like, do something like that where you're like, I have this treat in my bag, and I'm gonna go on a hike, and when I get to the top of, I don't know, Enchanted Rock, I'm gonna go ahead and have my Snickers bar. And you could, I don't know, do something. It's like that. I mean, not to advocate for pure sugar, but something to be, or you could get up there and just have a nice like gratitude journal and write in your gratitude journal. You don't have to always give yourself a treat, like you're a puppy, but you could get to the top of that hike and have something that's very special so that you can feel less stressed, right? So exercise is something you can't put in a bottle. So the mitochondria need exercise, they need you to sleep, and they need you to deep breathe. Now let's talk about things that are in a bottle. There are various biochemistry, I'm going to say vitamins, some antioxidants, nutrients that the mitochondria do need. And one, of course, is the B vitamins, especially the methylated B vitamins. There's a lot of little channels and little, enzymes and things like that are going to require the biochemistry from methylfolate and methylated B12. The other kind of style, I'm sure you've read about this, it's about the nicotinamides, right? So NADH, NMN, NAD plus and NADH, remember that H is hydrogen, and hydrogen's a proton. It's basically, hydrogen has 1 electron, right? So it helps set up those gradients. So does the FAD. So there's NAD and then there's FAD, right? And so here, riboflavin, I almost forgot it, that supports the FAD dependent enzymes. And then there's the NAD, that's the niacin pathway. Those are things that help set up those electron gradients to help the electrons flow in the mitochondria. So those are key things that are based upon vitamins, riboflavin and niacin in particular. Now, of course, you have CoQ10. CoQ10 is like an electron carrier. It's a little boat that carries the electrons. And so there's a lot of things that deplete mitochondria. Statins are real famous for depleting the mitochondria. There's other medications that deplete the mitochondria as well. You can go look those up. But CoQ10, the milligram dose matters. So, you know, I think when I first got out of school, it was like 100 to 200 milligrams. And then it just gradually went up to now it's probably like 400 milligrams to 800 milligrams of CoQ10. So that's an important nutrient that the mitochondria need. And oftentimes if somebody's taking medications that deplete CoQ10, you have to, it's a really good idea to supplement with CoQ10. Let's see here, alpha-lipoic acid. That is, you know, a really great cofactor for a lot of the biochemistry. So alpha-lipoic acid is an antioxidant. It's a cofactor. It reduces oxidative stress. It does a lot for the mitochondria. Remember, oxidative stress, any type of inflammation and that sort of style will deplete that flow of electrons in the mitochondria. So think of COVID, right? Those cytokine storms were really depleting for the mitochondria. And that's a big base for the long COVID, you know, so when people are having trouble like regaining their energy and their strength and, you know, getting out of pain, that's probably part of it. You know, their mitochondria health might not have been optimized prior. They might have been dealing with some chronic inflammation and you know, having COVID or having just like COVID infection that was really hard to handle anyway. You know, let's just even call it that. That's something that the mitochondria are trying to heal, right? Mitochondria utilize both the glucose and the fatty acid cycle. So acetyl L-carnitine, that's opening the doorway for the fatty acid shuttle to work. So working with carnitine in its different forms. And I do know that there are some genetics involved with carnitine pathway. So some people require carnitine more than others. If we have a slow fatty acid shuttle, then we're not likely to bring those fatty acids into the cell for energy. So you can see that in certain genetic pathways. Yes, let me see here. What else is on my list? Magnesium is in here. I have to look this one up a little bit more, but magnesium is required for ATP-dependent reactions. So there's probably some magnesium that in different forms. Oh, well, I know it. The magnesium malate shuttle. I know that one. You know, so the magnesium malate shuttle in the mitochondria, that uses the malate from the magnesium malate. Then it also uses NADH and it uses glutamate. And so that, you know, is a way that I think there's just one of the shuttles that sets up the gradient for the mitochondria. Let's see, what else here? Eat real food. That's something that can't be put in a capsule. Eat your veggies. Eat a variety of things. Antioxidants are really useful for the mitochondria. Of course they are, right? Because they are things that help supply or help not deplete that electron flow in the mitochondria. So eat the rainbow of things. You know, try to really get a bunch of fresh things going in. Eat food that is alive, right? I'm not talking about animals, but I'm talking about plants. I'm talking about things that are fresh. You know, make friends at the farmer's market, you know, these kind of things. Eat something that you haven't heard of before. I kind of want to try to make bitter melon. I was talking to one of my clients about that the other day. They knew how to cook bitter melon, and I feel like in the United States we don't really get a lot of bitter melon, but other cultures utilize bitter melon, and I see it at the grocery store a lot. And I know you can kind of juice it, and I know there's certain recipes with it, but that's one thing that I kind of want to learn how to work with is bitter melon, you know. And I think there's a season for it and stuff like that. Do an adventure like that. Go find a vegetable that you have not worked with. Go cook a rutabaga and start getting that into your diet. Put that on the plate. Put that on the menu today. So build your muscle, exercise. Exercise also promotes circulation. Circulation is also important for all this too. Sometimes even just stretching and working out your trigger points and things like that, reducing the muscular tension in the body by all that. I am famous for, yes, exercising and not stretching enough. And then, of course, after you do proper stretching, you feel so good, you know, so it's just something not to skimp on. And I know time isn't always like in abundance in our lives. So when you're just getting that like 30 minutes of exercise, then you've got to hit it and go to work. It's really okay to take a few minutes in between in your work day to just do a forward fold or do some yoga poses. I think you can get those in your day. It doesn't have to be like a complete routine. You know, what did somebody tell me the other day? It's like just a little exercise snack. You know, you're just doing a 3 to 4 minute stretch, or even, you know, you can build up muscle in 3 to 4 minutes. Like you can do chair or remember the chair thing that you would do? I remember in, when I was in high school, we would, I think it was in basketball or something, you sit on the chair, but it's not a chair. You're sitting on the wall, a wall sit, right? As though you're sitting on a chair. Why is this hard for me to explain? It is hard to do though. Go do that for 30 seconds or up to 3 minutes. You're going to build some muscles. You're going to build some quads, or do plank pose for a minute. That's the longest minute of your life, you know? So, and it doesn't take that long. We're talking about 1 minute and 3 minutes. You got time for that, you know? And then it increases muscle mass anyway. So you get a lot of benefit from it. So don't think that you can't, that you don't have time, because you do. We're just going to make time for it. And again, if you're exhausted, 30 seconds, 10 seconds, that's okay. Start somewhere. When you exercise, if you feel better after exercising, that was your cue that you did fine. If you exercise, and let's say you are tired, because who isn't tired, pushing themselves to the gym? But if you push yourself to the gym and you are exhausted afterwards, you overdid it. Like that's a little too much. Something's going on. So you want to gauge that for yourself. Most of the time, like for me, when I push myself and I go to the gym, I'm like, I felt great. This is amazing. I think I was just being whiny, which is okay. But but I have had times when I've been ultimately just exhausted, and even in a yoga class being like, this is too much. I'm going to call it and, know when to say when. And it just happened to be in times of my life when things were really, really exhausting. And that is okay. Listening to your body is always okay. So anyway, I'm going to write this article about the mitochondria and sign up for my newsletter, because that's where this article is going to live. So I was just working off some notes that I was taking about mitochondrial health. And I should get this probably out by maybe this week sometime. I wrote an article last week about the mitochondria, and this is going to be a different article about just the health and well-being of the mitochondria. Last week was the proteins that are released out of the mitochondria when they're in distress. So this week is more about mitochondrial health and what you can do to help your body. So anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this, and we'll see you next week.